A father of 3 was killed in broad daylight in Derby. In 22 seconds, a family was destroyed forever. The man responsible had arrived in the UK by small boat in October 2024. Less than 2 hours before the attack, he had reportedly threatened to kill 500 people. No action was taken. No arrests were made. When a preventable murder happens in broad daylight, the public has every right to ask, how did we get here? The murder didn't just cause grief. It ignited fury that had clearly been building for a long time. By late morning, crowds had gathered outside a large asylum seeker accommodation center in London's financial district. There were no official organizers, just ordinary citizens who had reached their limit. The crowds grew rapidly, from hundreds to thousands. Barriers were erected. Police in riot gear were deployed. Chants echoed through Canary Wharf. The unrest spread to Epping, where locals gathered outside another hotel following reports that an asylum seeker had been charged with sexually assaulting a young child. These were not isolated incidents happening in one place. Multiple flashpoints were opening simultaneously across the country, and authorities were visibly struggling to respond. These scenes were uncomfortable to watch, but to dismiss every person in those crowds as an extremist would be dishonest. Many were frightened, frustrated residents who feel completely unheard. Here is where legitimate questions demand straight answers. The UK government is currently spending over £5 million per day housing asylum seekers in commercial hotels. That amounts to nearly £2 billion per year. The nightly cost per person has been reported at £745, covering accommodation, meals, and transport. These are not conspiracy theories. These are figures that have been confirmed through government audits and parliamentary debates. Meanwhile, British households are dealing with the highest tax burden in decades, crumbling public services, and a cost of living crisis that is squeezing millions of working families. Local councils in some areas are cutting youth services and libraries to manage rising costs. The government has described the hotel accommodation policy as a temporary emergency measure. However, leaked internal documents suggest the Treasury expects this situation to continue for years. Hotel contracts, originally budgeted at £4 billion, are now projected to cost over £15 billion across the next decade. These numbers deserve serious public debate, not silence, and not spin. The core issue is not immigration itself. It is the complete failure of the system to manage it responsibly. Warnings about the Derby suspect were reportedly recorded and processed. They were not acted upon. A man died as a result. That is a system's failure, and it is entirely fair to hold the government accountable for it. When governments respond only after lives are lost, public trust collapses. And when that trust collapses, the scenes we witnessed this week become inevitable. Citizens are not wrong to demand that their safety is taken seriously. They are not wrong to question why billions of pounds are being spent on hotel accommodation while public services deteriorate. These are reasonable concerns that deserve reasonable answers. What is not acceptable is violence, intimidation, or targeting innocent people. Anger is understandable, but it must be directed at policy, not at people. The events in Derby, Canary Wharf, and Epping are not just a news story. They are a signal. When people repeatedly raise concerns and are met with delay, dismissal, or being labeled as bigots for asking questions, frustration eventually boils over. That is not a defense of disorder. It is a description of cause and effect. If the government is serious about restoring public confidence, it must start with honesty about the costs, about the failures, and about what it actually plans to do. Because what we saw this week was not the end of something. It was a warning of what comes if nothing changes.